The grand chamber of Nexus Prime Station stretched 300 meters in every direction. Crystalline walls caught and refracted light from a dozen different suns, creating patterns that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. Today the chamber felt like a tomb. Ambassador Elena Kovac stood alone at the center of the circular floor. Above her, arranged in rising tiers like an ancient amphitheater, sat representatives from 12 alien species. Each one looked down at her with expressions ranging from pity to contempt. The weight of their collective gaze would have crushed a lesser person. Elena had been a diplomat for 23 years. She had negotiated trade agreements, settled border disputes, and once talked down a fleet commander who was seconds away from glassing a colony world. But she had never faced anything like this. High Arbiter Zelthon rose from his seat at the highest tier. He was a Corthelian, a species that had ruled their corner of the galaxy for over 10,000 years. His body was covered in metallic scales that clinked softly as he moved, forearms spread wide in a gesture that seemed welcoming, but was actually a display of dominance. "Ambassador Kovac," Zelthon's voice echoed through the chamber, translated instantly into her earpiece. "We have summoned you here to deliver the judgment of the galactic confluence. Your species has been evaluated. You have been found wanting." Elena kept her face neutral. Years of training kept her breathing steady, her posture relaxed. "Wanting in what way, High Arbiter?" "In every way that matters." Zelthon gestured and holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber. Images flickered to life, showing human ships, human colonies, human soldiers. "In the mere 2 centuries since your kind achieved faster-than-light travel, you have established colonies on 47 worlds. You have expanded your territory by 12% each decade. You have built a military fleet that grows larger every year. We have colonized uninhabited worlds," Elena replied calmly. "We have not attacked anyone. We have not taken what belongs to others." A chittering laugh came from the third tier. Ambassador Zilith, representing the insectoid Vrex collective, leaned forward. "You expand like a virus, human. You consume resources, you multiply without control. You push ever outward. It is your nature. A dangerous nature." Another voice joined in, this one belonging to Ambassador Trell of the Harmonious Unity. "We have seen species like yours before. Always they say they come in peace. Always they say they only want to grow. And always eventually they turn to conquest. It is better to prune the tree before it bears poisoned fruit." Elena felt her jaw tighten. She forced herself to relax. "You're afraid of us." Silence fell across the chamber. Several ambassadors shifted uncomfortably. Zelthon's scales rippled, a sign of irritation. "We are not afraid," Zelthon said coldly. "We are cautious. We are wise. We have maintained peace in this galaxy for 7,000 years, by identifying threats before they can metastasize. Humanity is a threat. Based on what evidence?" Elena demanded. "Show me one act of unprovoked aggression. Show me one treaty we've broken. Show me one species we've wronged." Zelthon gestured again. New images appeared. These showed human soldiers firing weapons, human ships engaging in combat, human cities burning. Elena's blood ran cold as she recognized what she was seeing. "The Talvex incident," Zelthon announced. "Your forces attacked a civilian transport, killing 6,000 innocents." "That's a lie." Elena's composure cracked. "The Talvex were raiders who attacked our colony first. We responded in self-defense, and we went out of our way to minimize casualties." "The Gentarim massacre," Zelthon continued, ignoring her protest. "More images. Your troops executed prisoners of war." "Those weren't prisoners. They were pirates who had just murdered 300 colonists, including children." "The siege of Terminus Station." "More images, more death." "Your fleet destroyed a neutral space station, violating the Sanctuary Accords." Elena stared at the images. They were real footage, but edited, context removed, truth twisted into lie. Someone had been very thorough in building this case against humanity. "This is propaganda," she said quietly. "You know it is. Every one of these incidents was an act of self-defense or law enforcement. You've stripped away the context to make us look like monsters." "We see what we see," Zelthon replied. "And what we see is a species too aggressive, too expansionist, too unpredictable to be allowed to continue unchecked. Therefore, the galactic confluence has reached a decision." He spread all 4 arms wide. The other ambassadors rose from their seats in unison. "Humanity will dismantle its military fleet," Zelthon declared. "You will surrender control of all colony worlds beyond your home system. Your species will accept confluence oversight. With observers placed in your government and military command, you will submit to regular inspections to ensure compliance, and you will pay reparations to the confluence for the cost of managing your species. Elena felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath her feet. You're demanding our complete surrender, our enslavement. We are ensuring galactic peace, Zelthon corrected. Your species will be protected, fed, housed. You will be safe. You simply will not be free to threaten others. And if we refuse? Zelton's expression was unreadable, but his tone was clear. Then you will be eliminated. We have positioned siege fleets in orbit of Earth and your 16 largest colonies. We have weapon platforms aimed at your industrial centers and population hubs. If you do not comply, we will reduce your species to pre-spaceflight levels. You will be confined to your home world, your technology stripped away, your civilization set back 1,000 years. You would commit genocide, Elena whispered. We would perform a necessary amputation, Zelthon replied, to save the rest of the body from infection. The choice is yours, Ambassador. Surrender peacefully or be destroyed. You have 72 hours to deliver your government's response. Elena stood motionless for a long moment. Around her, the assembled ambassadors watched with varying expressions. Some looked smug. Some looked regretful. None looked willing to challenge Zelthon's pronouncement. Finally, Elena looked up at the High Arbiter. When she spoke, her voice was steady and cold. High Arbiter Zelthon, distinguished members of the Confluence, I have listened to your ultimatum. I have seen your so-called evidence. I have heard your judgment of my species. She paused, letting the silence stretch. And I find you guilty of the same crime you accuse us of, hubris. Zelthon's scales rippled again. You dare. You have made a grave miscalculation, Elena continued, speaking over him. You look at humanity and see only 2 centuries of history. You see a young species barely out of its cradle, and you assume we are weak. You assume we are naive. You assume we will either submit or die quickly. You have no choice, Zelthon growled. We have superior numbers, superior technology, superior position. Your fleet cannot stand against the combined might of the confluence. Your defenses will crumble. Your cities will burn. You cannot win, Elena smiled. It was not a warm expression. You've positioned siege fleets around our worlds. You've aimed your weapons at our homes. You've prepared to destroy us. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each ambassador in turn. But you made one critical error. You gave us 72 hours. You gave us time to respond. You gave us time to show you exactly what humanity has been building while you dismissed us as irrelevant children. Nothing you have can stand against us, Zelthon declared. We have catalogued your fleet. We know every ship, every weapon, every defense. You are outmatched in every category. You know what we've shown you, Elena corrected. You know what we've allowed you to see. But there's so much you don't know. So much you never thought to look for because you were so certain of your superiority. She reached into her jacket and withdrew a small device. Several guards in the chamber raised weapons, but Elena simply placed it on the floor and pressed a button. A holographic display appeared, showing star charts and fleet positions. These are your siege fleets, she said, highlighting each position. 300 capital ships, 6,000 support vessels, all positioned to strike at humanity's heart. It's an impressive display of force. Under normal circumstances, it would be overwhelming. It is overwhelming, Zelthon snapped. Accept reality, Ambassador. Surrender and your people will live. Refuse and they will die. Elena's smile widened. High Arbiter, before I came to this chamber, I sent a single message to my government. 3 words. Protocol Omega, let them see. What does that mean? For the first time, Zelthon sounded uncertain. It means, Elena said softly, that you're about to learn why you should never corner a species that refuses to die quietly. It means you're about to discover what humanity does when faced with extinction. It means you're about to witness something that no one in this galaxy has ever seen before. She tapped another command on her device. New data appeared, showing velocity readings and energy signatures. 72 hours, you said. That was generous of you, High Arbiter, but we only needed 48. In 24 hours, you'll understand your mistake. In 24 hours, something will arrive at Nexus Prime. Something we've been building in secret for 15 years. Something none of your scouts detected, none of your spies reported, none of your analysts predicted. You're bluffing, Zelton said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Elena gestured at the holographic display. Your own sensors will confirm it soon enough. There's a mass signature approaching this system. It's moving faster than anything in your records. It's bigger than anything you've ever constructed. And it's not stopping. Silence fell across the chamber again. This time it was different. This time there was an edge of uncertainty. Ambassador Zillith's antennae twitched nervously. What have you sent? Elena looked up at the assembled confluence and her expression was no longer diplomatic. It was the look of someone who had been pushed too far, who had nothing left to lose, who was done playing by rules designed to keep her species subordinate. We sent you a message, she said quietly. Written in steel and fire and human determination. We sent you the culmination of everything we've learned since we reached the stars. We sent you the reason why you should have left us alone. She walked toward the exit and the guards parted nervously to let her through. At the threshold, she turned back one last time. You wanted to judge humanity, High Arbiter. You wanted to determine if we're worthy of a place in your galaxy. Well, judgment goes both ways. In 24 hours, we'll see if you're worthy of the power you claim. In 24 hours, you'll face something that will redefine everything you think you know about warfare, about technology, about what's possible. What is coming? Zelthon demanded. Elena's last words echoed through the chamber as she disappeared through the doorway. The Indomitable. Commander Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched the stars bend around his ship. The view screen showed streaks of distorted light as the vessel tore through subspace at speeds that would have been called impossible 6 months ago. Now it was simply Tuesday. Status report, he said calmly. Lieutenant Jarek Nowak looked up from the tactical station. The young officer's face glowed in the light of his displays. Quantum drives operating at 98% efficiency, sir. We're maintaining velocity. Hull integrity at 100%. All weapon systems primed and ready. We'll reach Nexus Prime System in 19 hours. Webb nodded. 19 hours until they either saved humanity or died trying. Probably both. Commander, we're receiving the activation codes now. The communications officer, a middle-aged woman named Sarah Chen, turned in her seat. Protocol Omega confirmed. Ambassador Kovac has delivered the ultimatum. The confluence gave us 72 hours to surrender or face extinction. And how long ago was that message sent? 43 hours, sir. Webb allowed himself a thin smile. Then we're right on schedule. Acknowledge receipt and confirm our ETA. Let the ambassador know we're coming. He walked to the center of the bridge, hands clasped behind his back, and looked around at his crew. 200 officers and technicians worked at stations arranged in concentric circles around him. Beyond them, through reinforced corridors, another 11,800 crew members manned their posts throughout the massive vessel. Every one of them had volunteered for this mission. Every one of them knew they might not come home. Chief Engineer Chen, report to the bridge, Webb said into his communicator. 5 minutes later, Dr. Amara Chen stepped onto the bridge. She was no relation to Sarah Chen, despite sharing a last name. Where the communications officer was calm and professional, the chief engineer was barely contained chaos. Her gray hair stuck out in several directions, and there was what looked like grease on her collar. You rang, Commander? Amara said, wiping her hands on a rag. I want to make sure we're ready for what's coming, Webb replied. Give me the real status, not the official one. Amara grinned. The Indomitable is a beast, Marcus. A beautiful, terrifying beast. We've got 2 quantum singularities contained in magnetic bottles, each one producing more power than a small star. Our metamaterial armor has been tested against every weapon type in our database. The reactive matrix can adapt to energy weapons, kinetic impacts, even exotic particle beams, and the Helios array. She paused, her expression shifting to something between awe and fear. The Helios array is ready to remind the galaxy why they should have left us alone. Will it work? Webb asked quietly. It worked in simulations. It worked in controlled tests, but we've never fired it at full power, not in a real combat situation. Amara met his eyes. It should work. It will work. But if I'm being honest, there's a 5% chance something catastrophic happens when we pull the trigger. Define catastrophic. The containment field collapses, the plasma feedback loop destabilizes, and we turn ourselves into a small supernova. Amara shrugged. But hey, 95% chance that doesn't happen. I'll take those odds. Webb had worked with Amara for 8 years. He knew she used humor to cope with stress. He also knew she wouldn't have signed off on the system if she wasn't confident it would work. How many people out there know what we're carrying? He asked. In the confluence? Maybe a handful of their top scientists could theoretically understand the principles, but they'd dismiss it as impossible. In humanity, about 200 people know the full specifications. Another 1,000 know pieces of the puzzle. Everyone else just knows we built something big and scary. Lieutenant Nowak spoke up from his station. Sir, permission to speak freely? Granted. The young officer stood. I've been reading the specifications since we launched. I understand the Helios array, the quantum drives, the adaptive armor. What I don't understand is why we built just one. If we can make a ship like this, why not build a fleet? Webb had been waiting for someone to ask that question. Walk with me, Lieutenant. He led Nowak to the observation deck, a transparent dome that offered an unobstructed view of the distorted space around them. Other crew members were present, but Webb found a quiet corner. What do you think war is, Lieutenant? Webb asked. Nowak frowned. I don't understand, sir. War, conflict, battle. What is it? It's when two sides use force to impose their will on each other. Nowak replied slowly. That's one definition. Here's another. War is what happens when communication fails. It's the last resort of species that can't find a better solution. Webb gestured at the view screen. The confluence didn't declare war on us because they hate us. They declared war because they're afraid. They see us expanding, growing, becoming stronger, and they're terrified that one day we'll be strong enough to challenge their power. So we are a threat, Nowak said. Of course we are. Every species that refuses to stagnate is a threat to the established order. But there's a difference between being a potential threat and being an actual aggressor. The confluence couldn't tell the difference, or didn't want to. So they decided to eliminate us before we could become dangerous. Webb turned to face the young officer directly. Now, to answer your question. We didn't build a fleet because a fleet implies we want to conquer. A fleet says we're coming to take territory, to occupy, to dominate. One ship, though. One ship says something different. What does it say? It says we're capable of building something that can stand against your entire navy. It says we don't need numbers when we have innovation. It says we're not interested in conquest, but we're absolutely capable of self-defense. One ship is a statement. A fleet would be a threat. Nowak nodded slowly. But sir, what if one ship isn't enough? Webb smiled grimly. Then we make sure this one ship is so devastating, so overwhelming, so absolutely terrifying, that no one ever wants to test whether we could build a second one. An alert tone sounded throughout the ship. Webb's communicator chirped and Sarah Chen's voice came through. Commander, you need to get back to the bridge. We're picking up something on long-range sensors. Webb and Nowak hurried back to the bridge. The main view screen had switched from the navigation display to a tactical overview. Red icons filled the screen, hundreds of them. What am I looking at? Webb asked. Sarah worked her console. Long-range passive sensors detected a massive fleet concentration at the edge of the Nexus Prime system. They're in a blockade formation, probably intended to intercept any human ships attempting to reach the station. How many ships? Preliminary count shows 300 capital ships, ranging from light cruisers to dreadnoughts. At least 6,000 support vessels. It's the largest military gathering in recorded history, sir. Lieutenant Nowak whistled softly. They really want to make sure we don't get through. They know we're coming, Amara said. She had followed them back to the bridge. They must have detected our approach. They're scared. Good, Webb said. Fear means respect. They're taking us seriously. Sir, at our current trajectory, we'll reach their blockade in 18 hours, Sarah reported. They'll definitely have targeting locks by then. Shall I calculate an evasion course? Webb considered for a moment. The smart tactical decision would be to approach from an angle. Try to minimize the number of ships that could engage them at once. But smart tactics weren't the point of this mission. Negative. Maintain current course and speed. Take us straight through the center of their formation." The bridge fell silent. Every officer turned to look at him. "Sir?" Sarah's voice was uncertain. "That will put us in range of every weapon they have. We'll be taking fire from all sides." "I know. They could concentrate their entire fleet's firepower on us, even with our armor and shields." "I know," Webb repeated. "But we're not here to sneak past them. We're not here to outmaneuver them. We're here to show them that their entire fleet isn't enough to stop us. Maintain course." "Yes, sir." Sarah's fingers moved across her console, confirming the trajectory. Amara leaned close to Webb and whispered, "You know this is insane, right?" "Completely," Webb agreed quietly. "But it's the right kind of insane. If we avoid their fleet, they'll think we're afraid. They'll think we had to use tactics and cleverness to survive. We need them to understand that we don't need tactics. We need them to see us fly straight at them, absorb everything they throw at us, and keep coming. And if the armor doesn't hold, then we'll have about 30 seconds of being very surprised before we're vaporized." Webb raised his voice to address the bridge. "All hands, this is the commander. In 18 hours, we will engage the Confluence blockade fleet. They outnumber us 300 to 1. They have home field advantage. They have every tactical benefit except one: they're not us." He paused, looking around at his crew. Some looked nervous. Most looked determined. A few looked eager. "Humanity has been counted out before," Webb continued. "We've been dismissed, underestimated, written off. Every time we've surprised everyone by refusing to die quietly. Today we do it again. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when you push humanity to the edge. Today we show them why they should have left us alone." He took a breath. "The Confluence thinks this is a battle between their fleet and our ship. They're wrong. This is a test of whether superior numbers can overcome superior determination. A test of whether an old empire can suppress a young species that refuses to submit. A test of whether the future belongs to those who cling to power or those who fight for freedom." Webb's voice hardened. "In 18 hours, we're going to answer that test. And the answer is going to echo across this galaxy for the next 1,000 years. All hands to stations. Prepare for combat. And remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every species that's ever been told they don't matter, that they're too small, too young, too weak to have a voice. We're fighting for everyone who's ever been pushed down and told to stay down." He looked at each officer in turn. "So let's give them a fight they'll never forget." The crew returned to their stations with renewed focus. Orders were relayed throughout the ship. Weapons were charged. Shields were strengthened. Crews ran final checks on every system. Webb returned to his command chair and activated the ship-wide intercom. "This is Commander Webb to all crew. Battle stations in 17 hours. Get some rest, check your gear, and say whatever prayers you need to say. When we engage the Confluence fleet, I need every one of you at your best. Webb out." He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes for a moment. 15 years ago, when construction on the Indomitable had begun, he had been a junior officer on a patrol ship. He had watched the first hull plates being laid, watched the quantum drives being installed, watched a dream slowly become reality. They had built this ship in secret, in a hidden facility in a dead system far from prying eyes. They had recruited the best engineers, the best scientists, the best military minds humanity had to offer. They had poured resources into a project that most people would have called impossible, and now that impossible ship was about to crash headlong into the Confluence's entire fleet. Webb opened his eyes and smiled. Impossible was just another word for something that hadn't been done yet. 17 hours, he said to no one in particular. Time to change the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Korthax had commanded warships for 67 years. He had fought in 14 major engagements, crushed 3 rebellions, and earned more medals than he had chest space to display them. In all those years, across all those battles, he had never once felt afraid. Until now. Status report. He growled from his command throne aboard the dreadnought Eternal Dominance. Around him, dozens of officers worked frantically at their stations, monitoring the approach of something that should not exist. "The human vessel continues on direct approach," his tactical officer reported. Her voice trembled slightly. "Velocity holding steady at 0.97 light speed. Mass readings are off the scale. Sir, this thing is 8 kilometers long. It's 3 times the size of our largest dreadnought." Korthax stared at the tactical display. The red icon representing the human ship moved inexorably toward the center of his formation. 300 capital ships arranged in a perfect blockade sphere, bristled with weapons. 6,000 support vessels filled the gaps, ready to add their firepower to the defense. It was the most formidable military concentration in 1,000 years, and the humans were flying straight at it without slowing down. Communications. Have they responded to our hails? Negative, sir. They're ignoring all channels. They haven't even acknowledged our presence. Then make them acknowledge us, Korthax snarled. All ships weapons free. Fire a warning volley across their bow. Let them see what they're up against. Orders flashed through the fleet network. 200 ships adjusted their aim and fired. Energy beams, plasma bolts, and kinetic rounds streaked across the void. They converged on a point 100 kilometers ahead of the approaching human vessel, creating a brilliant display of destructive power. The human ship didn't even twitch. They're not responding to the warning shot. Admiral, I can see that, Korthax snapped. Navigation, calculate their trajectory. When will they reach engagement range? At current velocity, 47 minutes until they enter our outer weapons envelope. 32 minutes until optimal firing range. Korthax activated the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is the Admiral. The human vessel is approaching at combat speed with hostile intent. When they enter range, all ships will open fire. We will cripple their engines and force them to surrender. Hold your positions and stand by. He switched to a private channel with his old friend Captain Zendril, who commanded the cruiser squadron on the blockade's southern arc. Zen, what do you make of this? Zendril's voice came through with barely contained worry. I make that either they're suicidal or they know something we don't. No sane commander flies a single ship straight at an entire fleet. My thoughts exactly. Keep your sensors active. Watch for tricks, decoys, anything unusual. Sir, the whole situation is unusual. We're facing a ship that's bigger than anything that should be able to move, flying faster than anything that size has any right to go, heading straight toward 300 warships without hesitation. If this isn't unusual, I don't know what is. Korthax couldn't argue with that logic. He cut the connection and focused on the tactical display. 30 minutes until engagement range. 30 minutes to see if the Confluence's superiority was real or just assumed. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Commander Webb watched the timer count down. The view screen showed the Confluence fleet as red icons arranged in a perfect sphere. It looked impressive. It was impressive, it wasn't enough. Lieutenant Nowak, status on enemy fleet positions? They're holding formation, sir. No movement. I think they're planning to catch us in a crossfire when we reach the center of their formation. Of course they are. It's what I would do. Webb turned to Sarah Chen. Any communication from the fleet? They fired a warning shot 10 minutes ago. Otherwise, radio silence except for internal fleet chatter. They're nervous, sir. The intercepts show a lot of uncertainty in their command structure. They should be uncertain, Amara said from her station near the engineering console. They're looking at a ship that violates half the laws of physics they think they understand. Quantum containment, reactive metamaterials, gravitic manipulation. We're using technology they think is theoretical at best, impossible at worst. Webb nodded. How are our systems? Green across the board. The quantum drives are purring like kittens. Very large, very angry kittens that could vaporize a planet, but kittens nonetheless. The Helios array is charged and ready. Shield generators are at full capacity. Armor matrix is calibrated and responsive. We're as ready as we'll ever be. Good. All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. Alarms sounded throughout the massive ship. Crew members rushed to their combat positions. Bulkhead doors sealed. Weapon systems came online. Shields hummed to life, creating invisible barriers around the hull. The timer reached 0. The Indomitable crossed into the outer range of the Confluence fleet. Korthax watched the human ship enter his weapons envelope and gave the order he had been waiting to give. All ships open fire. Target their engines and weapons systems. I want that ship crippled, not destroyed. Fire at will. 300 capital ships and 6,000 support vessels opened fire simultaneously. The void lit up with thousands of energy beams, plasma streams, missile contrails, and kinetic rounds. The combined firepower of the largest fleet ever assembled converged on a single target. The Indomitable's shields flared brilliant white as the barrage struck. The view screen automatically dimmed to protect the crew's eyes. Energy readings spiked across every sensor. Then the light faded and the Indomitable was still there, still moving, not even slowing down. Report. Korthax roared. Direct hits confirmed, sir. All weapons struck the target. But sensors show minimal damage. Their shields absorbed most of the impact. and what got through was deflected by their hull. That's impossible. No shield can withstand that kind of concentrated fire. I'm telling you what the sensors show, Admiral. That ship took everything we threw at it and barely noticed. On the Indomitable's bridge, Webb reviewed the damage reports. Minor shield fluctuations on decks 7 through 12. Hull integrity at 99.4%. No casualties. No significant damage. They hit us with everything they had, Lieutenant Nowak said, awe evident in his voice. And we didn't even feel it. Oh, we felt it, Amara corrected. The shields absorbed about 60% of the kinetic energy. The armor took the rest and distributed it across the entire hull structure. We felt it. We just didn't care. Webb allowed himself a small smile. Lieutenant Chen, open a channel to the Confluence flagship. Let's talk to Admiral Korthax. The view screen shifted, showing the bridge of the Eternal Dominance. Korthax sat on his command throne, scales rigid with shock. Admiral Korthax, Webb said calmly, as if he were discussing the weather rather than flying through a hostile fleet. I am Commander Marcus Webb of the human warship Indomitable. You demanded our surrender. We decline. You threatened to destroy us. We remain unimpressed. Now I'm going to give you a choice. You have no right to offer me anything human. Korthax snarled. You are one ship against my entire fleet. Surrender now or be destroyed. You just tried to destroy us, Webb replied. It didn't work. Now pay attention, because I'm only going to say this once. Order your fleet to stand down and withdraw from this system. Do it now and no one else has to die today. You're insane. I have 300 capital ships. You had 300 capital ships, Webb corrected. Past tense, because in about 10 seconds you're going to have significantly fewer. Helmsman, maintain course and speed. Weapons, prepare the Helios array. Demonstration mode. Korthax's eyes widened. What are you? Webb cut the connection. Chief Engineer, you said there was a 5% chance of catastrophic failure. I want to make sure we're in the 95%. Too late for doubts now, Commander, Amara said, her fingers flying across her console. Helios array charging. Containment field stable. Plasma collectors at optimal temperature. Focusing array deploying now. On the exterior of the Indomitable, massive panels along the bow began to slide open. Beneath them, a complex array of magnetic coils, plasma chambers, and focusing lenses emerged. The entire structure was 300 meters across, a weapon system larger than most ships in the Confluence fleet. What is that thing doing? Someone shouted on Korthax's bridge. All ships, evasive action. Get out of its firing arc. But the Confluence fleet had arranged itself in a perfect sphere. To evade, ships would have to break formation, and that would take time. Time they didn't have. Helios array charged, Amara reported. Ready to fire on your command. Webb looked at the tactical display. The Indomitable was now in the center of the enemy formation, surrounded on all sides by hostile ships. Exactly where he wanted to be. You had your chance, Admiral, Webb said quietly. Fire. The Helios array unleashed hell. From the focusing lens, a beam of concentrated stellar plasma erupted. It wasn't a laser or a particle beam. It was actual matter torn from the heart of a captured quantum singularity, compressed and accelerated to a fraction of light speed, heated to temperatures that existed only in the cores of stars. The beam was 2 meters wide and burned with the brightness of a sun. It cut through the first Confluence ship like a knife through paper. The cruiser's shields flared for a microsecond before collapsing. The beam punched through the hull, through the interior, through the far side, and continued on to the next ship, and the next, and the next. The Indomitable rotated slowly on its axis, sweeping the beam across a 40-degree arc. 47 ships died in 6 seconds. They didn't explode. They didn't break apart. They simply ceased to exist, vaporized by temperatures that turned metal, polymer, and organic matter into ionized gas. Cease fire, Webb ordered. The beam cut off. Silence fell across every bridge in the Confluence fleet. 47 ships had been reduced to glowing clouds of superheated vapor. The crews, the weapons, the decades of construction, all gone in seconds. Korthax stared at the tactical display in horror. 47 icons had simply vanished. 47 crews, thousands of people, erased from existence. What? What was that? His tactical officer whispered. That, Webb's voice came through the communication channel, was a demonstration. That was me showing you what happens when you threaten humanity. That was me using less than 5% of this weapon's maximum output. The view screen showed Webb's face again. His expression was cold, hard, devoid of mercy. I could turn that beam on your flagship right now, Webb continued. I could vaporize you, your crew, and every ship within 10,000 kilometers. I could turn your entire fleet into gas and dust. But I won't. Not yet. Because I want you to go back to the galactic confluence and tell them exactly what you saw here today. You're a monster, Korthax breathed. No, Admiral, I'm a human. And we're done being dismissed, threatened, and pushed around. We're done accepting that other species have the right to determine our fate. We're done apologizing for existing. Webb leaned forward. Now order your fleet to withdraw, or I will demonstrate exactly how monstrous we can be when we're forced to. Korthax looked around his bridge. Every officer stared at him, waiting for orders. He looked at the tactical display, at the clouds of vapor that had been ships, at the massive human vessel that sat in the center of his formation, like a predator among prey. He had 300 ships. The human had one. By every tactical principle he knew he should attack. He should use his superior numbers. He should coordinate fire and overwhelm the enemy. But tactical principles assumed both sides were playing the same game. The humans had changed the rules. All ships, Korthax said slowly, each word tasting like ashes. Withdraw to defensive positions. Do not engage the human vessel. Repeat, do not engage. Admiral, his tactical officer questioned. You saw what that thing did, Korthax shouted. It destroyed 47 ships in 6 seconds. It took our best shot and didn't even slow down. If we attack, it will kill us all. Withdraw, now. The Confluence fleet began to move, ships breaking formation and retreating to safe distances. They maintained weapons lock but held their fire, creating a corridor through which the Indomitable could pass. Webb watched the fleet part before him like water before a ship's bow. Maintain course for Nexus Prime Station, standard approach speed. The Indomitable continued forward, flying through the gap in the blockade. Not a single shot was fired. 300 ships simply watched as one human vessel passed through their midst, unstoppable and unchallenged. We're through the blockade, sir, Lieutenant Nowak reported. His voice was shaking slightly. Nexus Prime Station is in visual range. Take us into orbit above the Galactic Council chamber, Webb ordered. And Lieutenant Nowak? Yes, sir. Send a message to Ambassador Kovac. Tell her we've arrived, and we'd like to have a word with the Council. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. High Arbiter Zelthon stood at his station, all 4 arms gripping the railing so hard his metallic scales were turning white. Around him, the representatives of the 12 confluence species sat in stunned silence. On the main holographic display, the Indomitable hung in orbit above Nexus Prime Station. The massive ship rotated slowly, its weapons arrays clearly visible pointed directly at the chamber. Every council member could see it through the transparent dome above their heads. It blotted out the stars. Report, Zelthon croaked. His voice sounded like rust. Admiral Korthax's face appeared on the communication screen. The old warrior looked like he had aged a decade in the past hour. High Arbiter, the blockade fleet has withdrawn to defensive positions. The human vessel passed through our formation without difficulty. We engaged with full force. It was ineffective. Ineffective? Ambassador Zilith's antennae trembled. You had 300 ships. How can it be ineffective? Because that thing absorbed everything we threw at it and then destroyed 47 of our capital ships in 6 seconds. Korthax replied flatly. I've been a military commander for 6 decades. I've never seen anything like it. It has a weapon that fires concentrated stellar plasma. It turned those ships into gas. Not debris, gas. Silence fell again. Several ambassadors looked like they might be sick. We need to evacuate the station, Ambassador Trell said urgently. If that weapon is aimed at us, it's too late for that, Zelthon said bitterly. We're hostages now. If we try to leave, they'll destroy us. If we stay, they'll destroy us. We have no options. There's always options, a new voice said. Every head turned toward the entrance. Ambassador Elena Kovic walked into the chamber, flanked by 2 human guards. She looked calm, composed, almost serene. She walked to the center of the floor and looked up at Zelthon. You wanted to judge humanity, Elena said. You wanted to decide if we were worthy of existing. Well, the Indomitable has delivered our response to your judgment. Now it's time for us to judge you. You dare, Zelthon started. I dare, Elena interrupted. Because right now I have 8 kilometers of human engineering sitting above your heads, with enough firepower to reduce this entire station to its component atoms. So yes, High Arbiter, I dare. Now sit down and listen. Zelthon sat. He had no choice. The main display shifted, showing Commander Webb's face. He sat in his command chair, backlit by the soft glow of the Indomitable's bridge displays. His expression was neutral, but his eyes were hard. Members of the Galactic Confluence, Webb began, his voice carrying throughout the chamber. 26 hours ago, you delivered an ultimatum to humanity. You demanded our surrender, our submission, our enslavement. You threatened to destroy us if we refused. You positioned fleets around our worlds, aimed weapons at our cities, and prepared to commit genocide against an entire species. He paused, letting the words sink in. You did this based on manufactured evidence. You did this based on fear. You did this because you're a collection of old empires terrified of anything new, anything different, anything that might challenge your comfortable dominance, and you thought we would simply roll over and accept your judgment. The display shifted again, showing new footage. This time it showed Confluence military operations, secret documents, intercepted communications. Elena had been busy during her time at the station. These are records of Confluence black operations over the past century, Webb continued. Operations against 17 different species. Every one of them was accused of being too aggressive or too expansionist or too dangerous. Every one of them was given the same choice you gave us: surrender or die. Most surrendered. The 3 that refused were destroyed. More images appeared, showing devastated worlds, extinct species, civilizations reduced to ruins. You've been running a protection racket, Webb said coldly. You maintain your position by crushing anyone who might eventually challenge you. You don't wait for species to become actual threats. You eliminate potential threats before they can become real. It's efficient. It's ruthless, and it ends today. You can't threaten us. Zelthon found his voice. You have 1 ship. Even if it's powerful, you can't stand against the entire confluence. You're right, Webb agreed. 1 ship can't conquer the galaxy. 1 ship can't occupy your worlds. 1 ship can't enforce our will across thousands of systems. But here's what 1 ship can do. The tactical display appeared, showing the Indomitable's weapons range overlaid on a map of the Nexus system. 1 ship can destroy every military installation in this system. 1 ship can reduce your fleet to particles. 1 ship can turn Nexus Prime Station into a debris field. 1 ship can eliminate your entire command structure in under 5 minutes. Webb's expression hardened. And if we do that, what happens to the confluence? What happens when your central government is gone? When your fleets have no coordination? When your member species realize there's no one to enforce your authority anymore? The implications rippled through the chamber. The confluence was held together by central authority and military power. Remove both and the entire structure would collapse into chaos. You're talking about destroying galactic civilization, Ambassador Trell said quietly. No, Elena interjected. We're talking about destroying your empire. Civilization will survive. It might actually thrive without your boot on its neck. What do you want? Zelthon asked. The fight had gone out of him. What are your demands? Webb leaned forward in his chair. First, the immediate withdrawal of all confluence forces from human space. Every ship, every station, every spy. You leave and you don't come back without explicit permission. Zelthon nodded slowly. Agreed. Second, the dissolution of the Confluence military blockade program. No more siege fleets positioned around developing species. No more ultimatums. No more extortion disguised as protection. That's impossible, Zillith protested. How would we maintain order? You wouldn't, Webb replied. Because maintaining your version of order requires threatening everyone who disagrees with you. Find a better way or find yourselves without an empire. Third, Elena continued, reparations. Not to humanity. To the species you've oppressed. To the civilizations you've crushed. To everyone who's ever been told they're too small, too young, too weak to have a voice. You're going to make amends? That could take centuries, Ambassador Trell said. Then you'd better get started, Elena replied. Fourth and finally, a new council. This one, she gestured around the chamber, is disbanded. You've proven yourselves unfit to govern. A new council will be formed, with representation from all species, not just the old powers. Humanity will have a seat along with every other species you've tried to suppress. The chamber erupted in protest. Representatives shouted over each other, some in outrage, others in fear. Zelton raised all four arms for silence. And if we refuse these demands? He asked quietly. Webb's finger hovered over a control on his command chair. Then I give the order and the Helios array fires at full power. Nexus Prime Station ceases to exist. Your government dies. Your fleets scatter, and humanity withdraws to our own space to wait and see what crawls out of the ruins you leave behind. You would kill thousands to make your point? You were willing to kill billions to maintain your power, Webb countered. Don't lecture us about proportional response. We didn't start this. We didn't want this. But we're damn sure going to finish it. Elena walked closer to Zelton Station. You made a mistake, High Arbiter. You thought humanity was like the other species you've crushed. Young, weak, easily frightened. You thought if you showed us your power, we'd bow down. But you forgot something important. What's that? Humanity doesn't bow, Elena said simply. We can't, it's not in our nature. You can kill us, scatter us, burn our worlds, but you can't make us submit. And that's what terrifies you, isn't it? That's the real reason you wanted us gone. Not because we're aggressive, not because we're expansionist, but because we refuse to accept that anyone has the right to rule us without our consent. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each representative. You had a galaxy where everyone knew their place, where old empires ruled and young species obeyed, where power was static and change was forbidden. Then humanity showed up and refused to play by your rules. We grew too fast. We adapted too quickly. We asked too many questions. And worst of all, we gave other species ideas. What if they don't have to obey? What if they can say no? What if the old order isn't actually order at all? Just tyranny with a prettier name. You'll bring chaos, Zelton said quietly. We'll bring change, Elena corrected. Change is chaotic. It's messy. It's unpredictable. It's also necessary. Your confluence has been stagnant for thousands of years. You've maintained peace by crushing anyone who might disturb it. That's not peace. That's just the absence of open war. Real peace comes from cooperation, from respect, from recognizing that every species has the right to determine its own destiny. She turned back to Webb's image. Commander, what's the status of our backup? Webb smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Backup is en route. 2 to 3 hours. Zelton's scales went rigid. Backup? You said this was one ship. I said the Indomitable was coming, Webb corrected. I never said it was alone. Admiral Korthax, you might want to check your long-range sensors. You're about to have company. On the Eternal Dominance, Korthax's tactical officer gasped. Admiral, we're detecting multiple mass signatures approaching from the outer system. Large signatures. Very large. How many? 12, sir. They're matching the mass and energy profile of the Indomitable. Korthax felt his primary heart skip a beat. 12 more? They have 12 more of those things? Apparently, his tactical officer replied weakly. In the council chamber, pandemonium broke out. Representatives shouted at each other, at Zelton, at Elena. Some demanded they surrender immediately. Others called for a fight to the death. Most simply looked terrified. Silence. Zelton roared. The chamber quieted. He looked at Elena, and there was something like grudging respect in his eyes. You've made your point, Ambassador. You've demonstrated that humanity can defend itself. You've shown us the cost of trying to destroy you, but you're asking us to dismantle an empire that's existed for 7,000 years. You're asking us to give up power we've held since before your species discovered fire. Why should we believe this won't just replace our tyranny with yours? Elena considered the question. Because we don't want to rule you. We just want to be left alone to grow, to explore, to make our own mistakes and learn from them. We want a galaxy where species rise and fall on their own merits, not at the whim of an empire that's afraid of change. She gestured at the Indomitable hanging above them. We built that ship in secret. We could have built an invasion fleet. We could have struck first, eliminated your leadership, shattered your empire before you even knew we were a threat. But we didn't. We built one ship and we sent it here to prove a point, not to conquer. And if we agree to your demands? Zelton asked. If we disband the confluence, withdraw our forces, accept this new order you're proposing, what guarantee do we have that you won't turn those 13 warships against us the moment we're weak? Webb answered. You have my word as a military officer, and you have the word of every human crew member on these ships. We didn't build them to conquer. We built them to ensure no one could ever force us to choose between slavery and death again. If you leave us in peace, we'll leave you in peace. But if you ever threaten us or any other species the way you threatened us today... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Zelton looked around the chamber one last time. He saw fear, anger, resignation. He saw an empire crumbling, an old order dying. And he saw something else, possibility. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, the humans were right, that maybe the galaxy could be more than it was. Very well, he said finally. The confluence accepts your terms. We will withdraw from human space. We will disband the blockade program. We will begin reparations. And we will convene a new council with broader representation. He straightened, regaining some of his dignity. But know this, Ambassador Kovich, you've won today. You've broken our power and remade the galactic order. But the future you're creating is uncertain. You're unleashing forces that have been contained for millennia. Change is coming, and not all of it will be good. I know, Elena said quietly, but it will be real. And it will be ours to shape. 3 months had passed since the Indomitable arrived at Nexus Prime. 3 months since the Confluence fleet scattered before a single human warship. 3 months since the galaxy changed forever. Commander Marcus Webb stood in the observation deck of the Indomitable, now stationed in high orbit above Earth. Below him, his homeworld turned peacefully, blue and white and green, beautiful, worth fighting for, worth killing for if necessary. He didn't like that last thought, but he couldn't deny its truth. You've been standing here for an hour, Dr. Amara Chen said, walking up beside him. She carried 2 cups of coffee, offering him one. Either you're having a philosophical crisis or you're avoiding paperwork. Both, Webb admitted, accepting the cup. How are the new ships coming along? Ships 2 through 13 are all operational. We're working on 14 through 18 in the orbital yards. Should be ready in another 6 months. Amara sipped her coffee. We're also getting requests from other species. Turns out when you demonstrate that you can build ships that make the old guard obsolete, everyone wants to learn your secrets. What did we tell them? The polite version of not a chance in hell. The technology isn't for sale, trade, or theft. Humanity's defensive advantage stays with humanity. She glanced at him. Though we are sharing some of the less sensitive innovations through the new council. Agricultural improvements, medical technology, some of the computational systems, enough to show we're willing to cooperate without giving away the weapons. Webb nodded. That was the balance they had to strike. Show that humanity could be a partner, not just a threat. Prove that their refusal to submit didn't mean they wanted to dominate. Have you heard from Elena? He asked. She's still at Nexus Prime working on the new council formation. Apparently it's like herding cats, except the cats are ancient alien civilizations with thousands of years of grudges against each other. Amara smiled. She says it's going better than expected, which probably means it's only a complete disaster instead of a catastrophic one. She's good at what she does. She's good at preventing wars. You're good at winning them. Humanity is lucky to have both. Webb wasn't so sure about that. He looked down at Earth and thought about all the things that could have gone wrong. If the Indomitable's armor had failed, if the Helios array had exploded, if the Confluence had called their bluff and attacked with everything they had, any of those outcomes would have meant extinction. We gambled the fate of our entire species on one ship, he said quietly. We rolled the dice and hoped they'd come up in our favor. That's not strategy. That's desperation dressed up as confidence. It worked, Amara pointed out. This time. What about next time? Next time we'll have more ships, more options, more experience. She looked at him seriously. Marcus, we did what we had to do. We were facing extinction. We found a way to survive. You can second-guess yourself forever, but it won't change what happened. The question isn't whether we made the right choice. The question is what we do now. Before Webb could respond, his communicator chirped. Lieutenant Nowak's voice came through. Commander, we're receiving a priority transmission from Nexus Prime. Ambassador Kovich requests a real-time conference. Put it through to the observation deck. A holographic display materialized, showing Elena Kovich standing in what looked like a conference room. She looked tired but satisfied. "Commander Webb, Dr. Chen," Elena greeted them. "I wanted to give you an update on the Council situation. It's official. The new Galactic Assembly has been formed. 43 species have seats, including humanity. We're no longer supplicants or threats. We're recognized as equals." "That's good news," Webb said. "What about the former Confluence members?" "Still adjusting. Selton actually resigned his position. Last I heard, he went back to his homeworld to retire. The Corthelians elected a new representative, someone younger and less invested in the old ways. Most of the other old guard species are following similar patterns. They're realizing that the galaxy moved on without asking their permission. Any resistance? Anyone trying to restore the old order? Some grumbling, some protests, but nothing organized. Turns out most species were just as tired of the Confluence's heavy-handed rule as we were. They just didn't have the power to resist. Now that someone finally stood up to the bullies, everyone else feels empowered to speak up too." Elena's expression grew more serious. "But that brings me to the real reason I'm calling. We have a problem. 3 systems that were under Confluence protection have started fighting each other. Old territorial disputes that were suppressed are flaring up now that there's no empire to keep them in line. We need to decide how to handle it." Webb frowned. "What are the specifics?" "The Tarkon and Velix systems both claim ownership of a mineral-rich asteroid belt between their territories. The Confluence decided the issue 100 years ago, but neither side accepted the ruling. They just didn't have the power to resist. Now they're mobilizing fleets. Let me guess," Amara said. "They want humanity to enforce the peace?" "Some council members are suggesting it, yes. They're calling for the Assembly to have a peacekeeping force. And since we have the most advanced military technology, we'd end up being the enforcers," Webb finished. "We'd become the new Confluence, just with a prettier name and better intentions." "That's my concern too," Elena admitted. "But if we don't intervene, those 3 systems might destroy each other. Millions could die. We have the power to stop it. Don't we have the responsibility to use that power?" Webb looked at Amara, then back at Elena's hologram. "What does the rest of the council say?" "They're divided. Some say it's not our business. Some say we should intervene immediately. Some want to negotiate. Some want to establish rules before we act. It's a mess, Marcus. And while we debate, people are loading weapons and preparing for war." Webb walked to the view screen, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, species that had just been freed from one empire were about to start killing each other over old grudges. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was discovering that freedom without order was just chaos with a better reputation. "Here's what I think," he said slowly. "The Confluence was wrong. They maintained peace through fear and force. They made decisions for everyone and crushed anyone who disagreed. That was tyranny, and we were right to end it." He turned back to face Elena. "But we can't just walk away and let the galaxy burn. We have power. We have technology. We have ships that can stop wars before they start. The question isn't whether we should use that power. The question is how we use it without becoming what we fought against. So what do you propose?" Webb thought for a moment, then nodded as the pieces came together in his mind. "The new assembly needs a defense force, but it can't be dominated by any one species. We'll contribute ships and technology, but so will others. We'll train crews from multiple species. We'll establish clear rules of engagement that require assembly approval before any military action." "A coalition force," Amara said, "with checks and balances built in." "Exactly. And for this Tarkon Velix situation, we don't send warships. We send mediators backed by the implicit threat that if they start killing each other, the Assembly will intervene. We give them a choice. Negotiate your differences or face consequences. But the consequences come from all of us, not just humanity." Elena considered this. "It could work. It's not perfect, but nothing will be. At least it's an attempt at shared responsibility instead of might makes right." "There's something else," Webb added. "We need to be clear about what humanity's role is in this new galaxy. We're not the police. We're not the rulers. We're just one species among many, and we have the right to defend ourselves and our interests. But we also have the responsibility to not abuse our power." "That's a narrow path to walk," Elena said. "It is, but the alternative is either becoming the new oppressors or standing by while others suffer. I'd rather try for the difficult middle ground." A new voice interrupted. "Well said, Commander." Webb turned to see Admiral Corthax's image appearing next to Elena's hologram. The old warrior looked different than he had 3 months ago. The rigid certainty was gone, replaced by something more thoughtful. "Admiral," Webb acknowledged, "I didn't expect to hear from you. I've been appointed as the Corthelian representative to the new Assembly's Defense Committee," Corthax explained. "It seems my experience with defeat qualifies me to help build something better than what we had before." "That's very diplomatic of you." Corthax's scales rippled in what might have been amusement. "I learned something when the Indomitable flew through my fleet, Commander. I learned that the certainty I'd carried for 67 years was false. I thought I knew how the galaxy worked. I thought I understood power. You taught me otherwise." "I didn't mean to humiliate you," Webb said honestly. "I know. That's what made it worse. You weren't trying to prove superiority. You were simply defending your right to exist. And that defense was so overwhelming, so absolute, that it broke every assumption I had about galactic order." Corthax leaned forward. "But here's what I realized in the aftermath. Maybe those assumptions needed to be broken. Maybe the old order needed to die so something better could emerge." "You've changed your tune," Amara observed. "I had 3 months to think about what happened. 3 months to watch the confluence collapse. 3 months to see dozens of species breathe freely for the first time in centuries." Corthax's expression was serious. The confluence maintained peace through fear. It worked after a fashion, but it also stifled growth, suppressed innovation, and made every young species choose between submission and extinction. That's not sustainable. Eventually, someone was going to say no. It just happened to be humanity. "And now you're helping build a new system," Elena said. "I am, because the galaxy needs order, but it needs the right kind of order. Order based on mutual respect instead of mutual fear. Order that allows growth instead of suppressing it. Order that can adapt to change instead of crushing it." Corthax looked at Webb. "Your proposal for a coalition defense force is sound. The Corthelian fleet will contribute ships and crews. We'll work with humanity and others to establish something that serves the Assembly, not any single empire." Webb felt something ease in his chest. If even Corthax could see the value in cooperation, maybe there was hope. "Thank you, Admiral. Your support means a lot. Don't thank me yet. We're entering uncharted territory. The galaxy has never tried to govern itself through cooperation before. This will be difficult, messy, and there will be failures. But," Corthax smiled slightly, "I'd rather try something new and difficult than continue something old and wrong." The conference continued for another hour, working through details and procedures. By the end, they had the outline of a plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. After the call ended, Webb and Amara stood in silence for a while, watching Earth turn below them. "Do you think it will work?" Amara asked. "I think we have to try," Webb replied. "We broke the old order. Now we have to help build something better. If we don't, we're just destroyers, not liberators. Heavy burden for one species to carry. We're not carrying it alone. That's the whole point. Humanity doesn't rule the galaxy. We just reminded everyone that they don't have to accept being ruled." Webb finished his coffee. "The next few decades are going to be chaos. Species learning to work together instead of competing for dominance. Old grudges being aired and resolved. New alliances forming. It's going to be messy. But it will be real," Amara said, echoing Elena's words from months ago. "It will be real," Webb agreed. He looked up at the Indomitable, hanging in orbit like a silent guardian. 12 more ships like it were scattered across human space, with more under construction. They were symbols of humanity's refusal to submit, monuments to the idea that no species should have to choose between slavery and death. But they were also responsibilities. Every one of those ships was a reminder that power needed to be wielded carefully, that the line between defense and aggression was thin, that good intentions could still lead to terrible outcomes. "Come on," Webb said finally. "We have work to do. The new galaxy won't build itself." They left the observation deck together, 2 humans among billions, walking toward an uncertain future that they had helped create. Above them, the Indomitable kept its eternal watch, weapons cold but ready, shields down but prepared. It was a promise and a warning, a promise that humanity would defend its freedom and help others find theirs, a warning that anyone who tried to take that freedom would face something they couldn't overcome. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity would not bow. Humanity would not break. Humanity would not go quietly into extinction. And more importantly, humanity would not become the thing they had fought against. They would walk the narrow path between strength and tyranny, between defense and aggression, between protecting their own and respecting others. It wouldn't be easy. But as Commander Marcus Webb had told the Galactic Assembly in his first official address, humanity didn't reach the stars by choosing the easy path. We got here by refusing to accept that anything was impossible. Now we'll prove that species can share a galaxy without one dominating all the others. We'll prove that strength and cooperation aren't opposites. We'll prove that the future can be better than the past. The speech had been broadcast across known space. Some species had cheered. Some had remained skeptical. Some had scoffed at human idealism. But all of them had listened, because for the first time in 7,000 years, the galaxy had hope that things could change. And it had all started with one ship, one crew, and one simple message delivered with overwhelming force. Humanity will not submit. Humanity will not die quietly. And if you try to make us, you'll discover exactly what we're capable of when our backs are against the wall. The message had been received. The galaxy was changing, and somewhere in the depths of space, 13 human warships waited patiently, hoping never to fire their weapons in anger again, but ready to do so if the need arose, because that was the burden humanity had accepted. The weight of being strong enough to defend themselves without becoming the oppressor, the responsibility of having the power to change the galaxy, and the wisdom to use that power carefully. It was a heavy burden. But as Webb had told his crew on that fateful day when they approached the Confluence fleet, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for everyone who's ever been told they don't matter. And in the end, that fight had been won, not through conquest but through demonstration, not through domination but through determination. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. Now came the harder part, proving they deserved to keep it.